There's bye-week chatter, guys, and it's not great. There's news that LaNorris Sellers may, for all intents and purposes, come back to school for another year. But will it be at South Carolina? Todd McShay thinks it might not be. Locked On Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marler. New shirt, Chris Marler. If you're watching on video on YouTube, I love it. Allie does not. She said, direct quote, did you steal that from a child? Because why is there a cartoon on it? Anyway, I love it, and I love the show we have for you today. We've got a good one. Before we get started, I want to say thank you to everyone making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, guys, free and available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. This thing keeps growing, and we really appreciate you guys being a part of that and really being the core part of it. Started the season saying I would donate $100 or $200 to NIL if we hit 7,000 subscribers before the season. We did. Check written. Now we're almost at 8. If we hit 8, I'll double it. So there you go. Very excited about where things are going, and it's a lot of it. Thank you to all of you guys. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. All right, we got a good show for y'all today. I've been absent for a couple days. Just trying to get some stuff kind of, I guess, researched and focused on for the upcoming shows that we're going to have. It's a bye week, so, we didn't take the entire week off, obviously, but we've got some good stuff for you today. We're going to start with something I think is a little bit odd. What I wanted to do this week was go over the potential OC candidates. We're going to talk about what Beamer has said about the OC candidate, also candidacy, also talk about who is going to be in charge of calling plays. He released that information earlier this week. But the news that came today, and what, of course, I thought was going to be a slow week, and of course, against all of my instincts in covering this stupid thing for 10 years, there's never any downtime during the season, it seems like, and I should have known that, especially living over here in Baton Rouge for right now. LaNorris Sellers, and there's a lot of people in his camp that think LaNorris Sellers will be back at school next season. Now, you guys and I, we've talked about this in the comments, we've talked about it in the live reaction a bunch of times. You guys have voiced it. I have too. I think that's probably what should happen. And if you start slipping out of the first part of the NFL draft, or the first round of the NFL draft, there's no reason to go. There's no reason to go. Next year's number one overall pick will most likely be Jeremiah Smith. This year's number one overall pick, I don't know who it'll be. Ty Simpson could be the guy. Fernando Mendoza from Indiana could be the guy. Ruben Bain from Miami, he could be the guy. But the quote that came out today was from Todd McShay, and he says, NFL scouts reportedly think LaNorris Sellers could transfer and forego the draft. South Carolina quarterback LaNorris Sellers is an intriguing NFL draft prospect. This is from Bleacher Report. Shout out to Paige Kuhn over there. During Thursday's episode of the McShay Show, the NFL draft expert Todd McShay revealed that NFL scouts feel LaNorris Sellers would forego the draft and return for another season of college football. Quote, there's a strong opinion in NFL scouting circles with LaNorris Sellers. He will be back in school next year, and he absolutely needs to. McShay said this around the 18-minute mark of the show. Everyone is supporting the concept of he needs another year in college, and there are people in his camp who are in agreement, is what I'm told. Now, at no part did he say, and Miami has reached out. Miami has been in the market for a quarterback. Miami will try to poach LaNorris Sellers. That was never said. But there's precedent and there's a track record. And when you talk about how big of a deal he would be to return, you cannot have LaNorris Sellers return to school and have it not be in garnet and black. You can't. And I know this is a hot button topic for a lot of people that are like, no, he's not been very good. I can't, let's go start somewhere else. Let's go get somebody else to start. Can Cutter Boley play? Blah, blah, blah. He is a unicorn, and he is a really good quarterback. And the track record from the last 6 games of last year should show you that. There are some fits in college and in pro, and probably in high school, where a quarterback does not fit in a system. Joe Burrow was a nobody at Ohio State. At LSU, he became one of the greatest quarterbacks in college football history. Cam Newton was a backup at Florida. Now, he left for different reasons. We all know that. But there are players in certain types of – I'll give you a perfect example. Who is the kid? Gardner Minshew. Gardner Minshew was a kid that I think was at like Wake Forest or something like that and was going to apply to be a GA at Alabama. And he didn't get that spot because then Washington State, with Mike Leach still there, sent out a last-minute offer to him. So he wouldn't play his final year at Washington State, was like one of the top passers, or if not the top passer in the country, makes it to the NFL, and has had a career ever since. He could have ended his career by being a GA, right? So I say all that to say there are some times where you're fit and what you do as a quarterback does not fit and does not align with the people that are calling the plays for you. That is clearly the case with LaNorris Sellers and Mike Shula. It didn't work sometimes last year in his first year as a starter under Donald Loggins, but it damn sure worked in the last 6 games. We all saw it. So I say all that, and I will be 1,000% honest with you. I'm saying it to defend him and to strike out the notion of anybody in here that is saying, I don't care if he goes, good and riddance. Now, there's also a way to look at this and say, if he tries to pull, this is a lacking in phrasing here, and a bad way to phrase it, but I'll do it anyway. If he tries to pull like a Nico Mialieva situation, I butchered that. If he tries to pull one of those situations where he's trying to double what he's currently making and get rid of the deal that he currently has, because he signed a 2-year deal, or he was negotiating for 2 years to come back. If that's the case, then yeah, I understand if you're like okay with parting ways if you don't have the funds. But if LaNorris Sellers returns to college, he damn well better be playing in Williams-Brice Stadium for his home games next year. Point blank, period. Period. I understand the struggles he's had so far this year, but that kid is a unicorn, and that kid needs to be playing for this team next year and figure out things from there. Now, it's not what everyone planned for the season. Like, I looked up the numbers the other day, and you look at what he has as a quarterback from a passing standpoint, 7 touchdowns on the season. I think 5 interceptions. That's horrible. Like all things considered, that's horrible. And it's nowhere near where any of us thought he was going to be. He needs another year in college. And listen, if he went pro, someone's going to draft him in the first 2 rounds. He will go. He probably will get drafted in the first round. Like, that is just the nature of the NFL draft. He will show up to Indianapolis at the Underwear Olympics. He will run a 4.49 or a 4.5 at 6'3", 245. He'll throw the ball a country mile, and somebody will say, yeah, I can work with that. We've seen it time and time again. So the idea that he's not going to get drafted is just, to be honest, is stupid. The idea that you wouldn't want him back on your team is also stupid. Now, I think that's more of a fan reaction that are frustrated with how the season's going. But LaNorris Sellers coming back with that on the line, with his draft stock on the line, which I know some of you can say, well, it was on the line this year. Not like that. With all those receivers in for another year, with bringing in, Darius Gray and a couple other really good players in the offensive line or something like that, maybe getting that short up, it can't be worse, I would think, right? It can't be worse. Having all of those things in place and then having some sort of offensive coordinator, maybe it's Jordan Davis from North Texas, and you have everything else in alignment at South Carolina. I hate to already start beating the drum and banging the drum for why next year could be really great, but that's why it could be really great. So I think it's important if that's options on the table, he cannot leave Columbia, South Carolina. The precedent for Miami, even though they have not been in contact with him from what we have been told, now who knows what the truth is, the precedent from Todd McShay saying that was primarily because they are starting to have a track record for, we're developing kids from the portal that are going to go into the NFL draft. Now, they had a kid from Houston in 2021, right when the portal really opened, and that kid, I forgot his name now, Derek King. And he signed the first NFL or NIL deal that anyone found out about. It was with College Hunk Movers for $20,000. None of us knew what this was going to turn into. But then they got Cam Ward and turned him into a number 1 overall pick. And then they got Carson Beck and paid him $4 million. So there's precedent on both sides of this where it's like, now I'm not saying they're churning out first round number 1 overall picks at quarterback at Miami because of how good the offensive development or quarterback development is down there at all. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is they have shown multiple times. Now let's keep in mind, Derek King did not only make $20,000. Cam Ward was paid about $1.5 million. Carson Beck was paid $4 million. they have been willing to show that they are willing to pay for you to go there. That's a tough sell to not, or I guess it's more of a tough thing to turn down, going to live on the beach, making upwards of $3 to $4 million, and then get drafted. Because think about the defenses he's going to face and all that kind of stuff. That is a real fear that I think people would have if he were to go elsewhere. Now, we're going to take a quick little break. When we come back, we're going to talk about retention, why it's important for not just him, for several other people, but also if you get him to stay, you may just hit the jackpot. Like you may just hit the jackpot in terms of other players wanting to come here. Now, we'll talk about that when we come back. Before we go to break, I do want to give a quick shout out to one of the sponsors of today's show, and that is our friends at Supply House. Good radio. Supply House. Here we go. Listen, when the opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today. See parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while the industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. If you need parts fast for a project, Supply House has next-day delivery. Talk about a game changer, guys. The part finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. Join the free Trade Master program today and score serious perks like priority shipping, lower prices, and a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SHCollege5 for 5% off your first order. That is supplyhouse.com, real people, real service. Now, when we come back, we're going to talk more about LaNorris possibly leaving and if Miami would be a suitor, and also talk about how important this year's retention truly, truly is and what it can mean for next year as well. Locked On Gamecocks continues right after this. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the Sellers situation. So I want to also, I don't want to say preface because we're 12, 14 minutes in. This isn't something that's being reported. This is basically saying 2 + 2 = 4. Here's something to look out for, right? Like, hey, if LaNorris Sellers is returning, would he stay at South Carolina? I don't know. Has there been a real reason for him to stay back at South Carolina after what we saw from this year? Can he develop into a great quarterback there if he stays for another year? Now you start talking about who he brings as an OC. Does it fit his scheme? I just said on the last show, you don't want to bring in somebody that is only for LaNorris Sellers, but now you may have to manage a part of this where it's like, if he returns, you damn sure want him in an offense that is like suited to his skill set, right? And figuring out like how to also put those pieces together for the future, but also you want it to be something for his skill set moving forward. So there's that component of it. The other component of it's this: your two biggest players from this year's team, right, coming into the season especially, you had LaNorris Sellers and you had Dylan Stewart. I remember getting a text from somebody on the staff on Christmas Eve telling me that they got LaNorris Sellers. And I immediately went to go with my spotty ass, internet over there in Lexington, recorded a show immediately, brought it up. It was a great episode, all that kind of stuff. Hold on, the missus in here. Okay, that's nice. We're recording live, so that's really sweet. She's having a real tough week with Hugh Freeze, guys. Anyway, so I think I will say this. One of the most impressive things I saw from last year, and I brought this up a bazillion times, you guys are probably still tired of hearing me say it, but like one of the things that I was really impressed with last year was how good of a job this staff did at retention from early on. And now make no mistake about it, they're doing the same thing, especially in a bye week, starting to figure out terms, negotiate stuff, and figure out when they need to start doing or how they need to start keeping people in place for next year. Dylan Stewart was one I believe we started hearing around the 1st of November of last year. They were starting to negotiate his deal. LaNorris was earlier in September. Great foresight. Not a lot of other programs were at least publicly doing that. I think it's important to go back and run it back again. And like there are some players, if you can keep this nucleus, there's still a lot of really good players on this roster. Yeah, and figuring out a way that you're going to be able to pay for all those things, that's above my pay grade. Literally, I'm no part in that, and like I'm terrible with money, unless I have Monarch money, one of our good friends. but I'm terrible with money. So it's like, I would probably overpromise the world to these kids to make sure they came back. Now, for next year's team, we don't know who's going to go where with the portal, when it's going to open, all that kind of stuff. We don't know if South Carolina's even be going to a bowl game. That part is also a little bit more frustrating because it's like you have these kids that are going to be kind of more wide open to being contacted by other schools. You don't know, like the way this whole process is now, it's kind of a little bit more of a wild, wild west, even though they're finally starting to put some guardrails on it. But LaNorris specifically, you got to figure out a way to keep. And I the desire to go to a school like that goes far beyond just the beach part of it. I brought this up last year with Carson Beck. Carson Beck faced 9 top 50 ranked passing defenses at Georgia a year ago in 2024. Yeah. Cam Ward, playing for Miami in the same season, faced 2. So if you're trying to up your draft stock, Carson Beck, it makes sense what he did and to go compete in that schedule with the ACC versus the SEC schedule. So I fully get it. Again, we don't know if how active the tampering thing would be. You'd have to be dumb to think that it wouldn't be something pretty consistent for a player of LaNorris Sellers' caliber. And I would also think that with the news of him potentially coming back, it would be ramped up. But listen, it was ramped up last year. People were going to offer him millions last year, and he decided to stay. Auburn was a suitor for him that offered him, I think it was around 1.8 or $2 million. There will be others that will come for him, but you have to figure out a way that entices him to stay, because I do think that I think you'll see it. More importantly, I think you'll see it because this is a make or break year for Shane Beamer. It's a make or break year for Shane Beamer. And I know I've seen all the comments. I get all the people that are frustrated with, like, you know, how bad the hires have been for his OCs, and like they've been frustrating. And outside of the 6 games that Dowell Loggins had, I feel like there's some frustration there that's very warranted for every single hire he's made. I say all that to then also say, like, you have the blank canvas to really, really like you can almost take a page out of Miami's playbook. And what I mean by that is this: when Miami put together their roster the past 2 years, last year and this year, I kept comparing it. Ole Miss in 2024 is very similar to this. I compared it to this idea where it's like it almost felt like a major league baseball team that was trying to figure out how to get like a pennant race or get in a pennant race, get to the World Series, get to the playoffs, whatever, in that season. They like their chances that year. They're going to go all in. So right before the trade deadline, they're going to make a ton of moves and bring in some talent right away to bolster their team. That's what Miami and Ole Miss really did. Neither one of them made the playoff yet. Ole Miss probably will, but like that's what they did. And now for a school like South Carolina that didn't have a ton of money, on July 1st of this year, you got $20 million to play with, and about 75% of that, most likely, is going to football. So around $15 million is going to football. Now, and that, listen, I'm not making that number up. That number is consistent with what almost every single AD, and there's been plenty that I've talked about this, and general manager and stuff like that has said what the divvying would be. I'll tell you right here in LSU, and this is a pretty comparable athletic department because much like LSU, South Carolina is good at a number of sports. And like there's some, like Kentucky is putting over 50% of their NIL towards basketball alone. They had $20.2 million spent on this year's roster. Maybe it's $22 million on this year's roster. Schools like Rutgers, St. John's, teams that are trying to get really good at basketball, they're going to spend a lot more on that. But I bring up this specific comparison strictly because you talk about LSU, who has women's basketball is really good. They're really good at track and field, pretty good at golf. They had like 8 teams in the spring alone last year that ranked in the top 10. Softball is really good. Same as South Carolina. Men's basketball is terrible, but they're spending more money on it. Then you have the football team, which generates and garners most of the money. But you still, I talked to the Associated a couple weeks ago, saying in the GM for the basketball team saying this is the breakdown, 75% split here. It's a very long-winded way of saying I think that football is getting 75%, and here's why. If that's the case, you have a chance. If you're Shane Beamer, and y'all are going to shoot me probably for sitting here and already starting to pump up next year, and maybe it's deserved. Maybe it's deserved, but you do have a chance to sit here and go about next year as an all-in approach, not trying to do Clemson hashtags and crap like that, but I'm saying an all-in approach to this year because he knows it's make or break for his job. Sellers is going to be going into the draft and all these other like things that are going to factor in. It's make or break to win in that year. So why not put all of your eggs in the basket, push all your chips in, and say, yeah, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm prepared to do. This is what we're going to spend. Here's what we're going after. Here's the position units we're going after. We are going to make this work. And you have a really good chance to do that, especially if LaNorris comes back. And a lot of you are not going to like this. But if he comes back, yeah, give him more money. Build this thing around him and figure out how you win football games like you did last year. All right, I'm done with LaNorris. I'm done with the LaNorris talk. I know some of you are frustrated, and I apologize. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk about the OC. We're going to talk about who's calling plays. And we're going to say one more thing I think you guys will be very excited to hear about, if I remember to say it, because the ADD is all over the place today. All right, Locked On Gamecocks continues after this. Welcome back. Real quick, before we get back underway, I want to say this. The NBA is back. There's no better place, by the way, to get in on the action in the NBA than FanDuel. That's the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride out the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com, sign up, and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, here's what I want to talk about real quick, and it's a number that has me potentially sold on who I think the next hire should be. Before I tell you who the next hire should be, or is going to be, or any of that kind of stuff, speculation, I also want to tell you what the plans are from Beamer's Own Mouth from this past week, which is Mike Fury is going to be calling plays on game day. So him and Sean Elliott are going to like kind of tag team the OC situation. They're going to be in charge of the meetings, figuring out the game plan, all that kind of stuff. It kind of works out a really good spot in the season because you're in a bye week, gives you an extra week to prepare, kind of go through some of the motions. Just the process itself of calling plays. And Mike Fury's done before. It just at a much smaller level. And this will be a good spot for him to go out there and kind of play with some of the toys that he's brought in from a talent standpoint and the receivers and all that kind of stuff. And it'll be interesting to see if we start getting some different wrinkles into this offense or just a new offensive identity in general. Like maybe we start seeing more 3 and 4 wide, or maybe we start seeing more 13 personnel. I don't know. But I'm very eager to see what it looks like and just look for something different. I think, honestly, I said this so much, and this is how beaten down and apathetic I feel like I've become throughout the season. And it's like it got so bad with Shula that I would still take a crappy 300-yard performance if it meant he just ran some people in motion or did some misdirection or took a couple deep shots. And he did that against Bama, but just was a little bit too late after the Ole Miss debacle and what happened there. Now, Mike Fury will be calling plays. I'm excited for that. I love that kid. That kid. I think he's older than me. I hope he is. Otherwise, I need to really look at a career change. Mike Fury, he wakes up and goes. Those two, the energy that him and Elliott are going to have together on the sideline is going to be awesome. Awesome. Do you ever follow Mike Fury on Twitter? I mean, it is a lot of all capitals, all capital letters, a lot of exclamation points, and just fired up, ready to take on the day. I'm excited to see what him and Elliott can cook up with this offense. Now, looking forward to the next offensive coordinator and where they should go, I want to bring up one stat that has me. I'm not sold yet. Admittedly, I haven't done the deep dive yet on all the coaches because we've had a busy week over here. But I will tell you another selling point that I just stumbled upon today. Jordan Davis, the guy from North Texas. Someone said he's making $250,000 a year. Actually, we can probably look that up right now. Jordan Davis, North Texas salary. My man is making $225,000. If you give him $1.2 million, does he come here? Probably so. And I laid out all the numbers to him the other day, how good he is. how much he deserves to be. Hold on. He got a pay bump, $246,000, guys. $246,000. What you can do with Jordan Davis is get him at a discount. You don't have to go out there and pay $2 or $3 million like some teams did in the offseason for coordinators. I do think you could pay him $1 million. You probably pay him $800,000 and get him in here and have him be the guy in charge. But here's what I'm most excited about. And this is something I'm just looking for, like, differences in what we currently have in Columbia versus what we could have, or what other teams that they're suiting those OCs and play callers that already have. You guys know, especially when it comes to betting, I love first quarter, first half lines. Love it. Love it. There are some teams that just get out to a hot start better than most. Now, there's also something to be said for second half points per game and points per game allowed. And you see teams like Georgia, especially in their point per game differential, especially in the second half of games, when the halftime adjustments are finally made, that is usually a pretty good indicative sign of which coaching staffs and which head coaches are best at in-game adjustments and are able to make, like, little, tinker with things in the game, in the middle of the game, or at halftime to fix whatever's happening if something's going wrong in the first 30 minutes of play. Now, I read all Jordan Davis' stats the other day and North Texas offense and how good they are, okay? How about this, though? Did you know? Everyone knows how bad South Carolina's offense is all the time. But North Texas has the fourth-ranked second-half offense in the country. In the second half of games this year, they are averaging 19.9 points per game against Power 4 opponents. That is fourth, tied with South Florida, and only behind Indiana, Air Force, Southern Cal, and that's it. And they're only behind, I think Indiana's number one at 21.6. So they're 1.7 games or 1.7 points per game behind the number one team in the country. That means they didn't score like 7 points or 10 points. Like, they're 10 points back. I bring that up because it feels pretty important to also say, well, where's South Carolina ranked? I'm glad you asked. 129th in the country at 6.6 points per game. Go find me a guy who can light up the scoreboard, have a very diverse, unique, and dynamic offense, and then, I don't know, score for 60 straight minutes instead of just the first 15, first 30, second 15, whatever Mike Shula was doing. Go find me someone that is going to light it up in the second half of games. 129th is where South Carolina ranks right now. It is dead last in the SEC. It is fifth worst in all of Power 4 and 129th in the country. Another notch on the belt for Jordan Davis. There you go. That is all for today's episode. I appreciate you guys so much, man. It's been a long week, but a good week, and I appreciate y'all. And we will talk to you tomorrow with another episode of Locked On Gamecocks. Until then, go Cox.